Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unlocking the Potential of Animal Biotech in the Philippines, Research Updates and Regulatory Prospects. This webinar is part of a series organized by ISA Inc. in collaboration with the DA Biotech Program Office. I am Janine Escasura from ISA, and I will serve as the moderator for today's event. This webinar is part of a series aimed at providing information on local, regional, and international animal biotechnology updates and regulatory prospects. As of now, we have more than 60 participants joining us today. Please be reminded that this webinar will run for 2 hours and will be recorded for documentation and evaluation purposes. Before we start the webinar, please allow me to quickly remind you of the house rules. First, Zoom attendees are requested to keep their microphones on mute unless invited to speak. We highly encourage our audience to engage and actively participate during the Q&A session. You may also post your questions using the Zoom Q&A button seen at the bottom of your screens. Please do not forget to indicate to whom you are directing your question. These questions will be addressed during the Q&A session. Lastly, please complete and fill out the online evaluation form to receive your certificate. A link and QR code will be flashed at the end of the webinar, and only those who have accomplished the post-webinar survey will be given the e-certificates. We also have a set of activity objectives that we would like to achieve at the end of the webinar. First, this webinar intends to provide an overview and status of animal biotechnology R&D in the Philippines and other countries. This webinar also aims to expound on the challenges and potential regulatory directions that can support the responsible and sustainable use of these technologies. Lastly, this webinar intends to foster meaningful discussions on animal biotech policies and regulations among stakeholders. To formally start the webinar, may we call on the Executive Director of ISA Inc., Dr. Rodera Romero Aldemita. Dr. Aldemita is a multi-awarded scientist and science communicator. She holds a PhD in botany from Purdue University and a postdoctoral fellowship on a golden rice at Albert Ludwigs University, Germany. She coordinates the activities of ISA's Global Knowledge Center on Biotechnology, as well as capacity building activities on biotechnology and biosafety in Asia, in partnership with the USDA and Philippine DA Biotech Program Office. She is also a member of the technical advisory team of the Applied Biotechnology Committee of DABPO, a board member of the Biotech Coalition of the Philippines, the editor-in-chief of the Philippine Journal of Crop Science, and the scientific reviewer of 6 scientific journals. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Rodora Romero Aldemita.
Hello and good morning, good day, good evening, everyone. I know that we have international participants with us today. Is my audio okay? Yeah? Okay. So,
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to the ISA International Service for the Acquisition of Agri-Biotech Applications webinar. So this is titled Unlocking the Potential of Animal Biotech in the Philippines, Research Updates and Policy Prospects. We are the International Service for the Acquisition of Agri-Biotech Applications, Incorporated, a nonprofit organization based at the International Rice Research Institute, Los Baños, Laguna. We envision a world where accurate biotech information empowers farmers and consumers to drive food security through innovation. Our mission is to feed the world with knowledge on biotechnology by supporting transformative technologies, fostering impactful partnerships, and facilitating the development of science-based policies toward food-secure communities. So this webinar, as Janine said, is part of a series that provides updates on local, regional, and international regulatory pathways for new breeding techniques and animal biotechnology. But this webinar is the second of the series that will provide an overview of animal biotech research and regulatory prospects in the Philippines. We are pleased to know that our audience is composed of regulators, regulatory system, experts, policy experts, researchers, partner institutions, farmers, farmer groups, students, and the general public. Interest in animal biotechnology is increasing, as we all know, as products of this technology are becoming available to provide solutions for problems in livestock, poultry, and aquaculture. ISA Inc. has a database that indicates the research and development and products that are currently available for commercialization globally. So you may look this up at our isa.org website. You go to the database, the resources, and click on the genome edited animals database. And you will see there a lot of information, and this is all new. It was only launched in September last year. The Philippines, as we know, is a regional leader in biotech corn adoption with our science-based regulation, competent scientists, and building and budding technology-based economy. Our budding biotechnology-based economy acknowledges the potential contribution of animal biotechnology in the food and agriculture industry. In today's webinar, we will feature the experts, 3 experts, who will provide an overview and status of animal biotechnology R&D in the Philippines and other countries, expound on the challenges and potential policy directions that can support the responsible and sustainable use of these technologies in the Philippines. And we can clarify issues. And I hope that during the discussion session, there will be a meaningful discussion on animal biotech policies and regulations among all the participants, among the stakeholders, and also our experts. So we hope that by the end of this 2-hour webinar, our esteemed participants, especially the regulators and policymakers, could have understood and appreciated the potential benefits of animal biotechnology, which we can access only with a science-based and fit-for-purpose regulatory framework. Our young and aspiring scientists will have enough knowledge to share with peers and be inspired to embark on the biotechnology career track, and the general public to appreciate and adopt the products of innovation for food and agriculture. So with that, we would also like to invite you to visit our ISA website. We have a lot of materials, publication materials that you can download. You can request for high-resolution copies that you can also multiply and distribute within your peers. So thank you very much, and happy learning, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Ola. Now, please allow me to introduce to you our first speaker for today. Dr. Marvin A. Villanueva is currently the Chief of the Department of Agriculture Livestock Biotechnology Center. Dr. Villanueva obtained his Doctor of Philosophy in Veterinary Science at Hokkaido University, Japan in 2016. He took his Bachelor of Science in Animal Husbandry and Doctor of Veterinary Medicine at Central Luzon State University in Nueva Ecija. Dr. Villanueva has been deeply engaged in research, development, and innovation in the fields of veterinary medicine, animal zoonotic diseases, food safety, livestock biotechnologies, epidemiology, detection and control of bacterial zoonotic diseases, and addressing operational health problems in ruminant farming. His numerous studies and paper publications have been uploaded to the Web of Science and Scopus Index publications, which represent his contributions to the growing pool of information in the fields of veterinary science and medicine. He is also a recipient of national awards such as 2018 PSAS Outstanding Young Professional in Veterinary Animal Science Research and the 2021 Outstanding Young Scientist Award in the field of veterinary medicine. To discuss animal biotechnology in global and Philippine context, please welcome Dr. Marvin A. Villanueva.
Thank you very much, Ms. Janine, for the kind introduction, and also thank you for the ISA Inc. for the invitation. Okay, so the outline of my presentation for today is first I will briefly discuss the overview of biotechnology applications in animals in the global context. And then I will dive into several GM and GE animals and products that are available, those that are available already in the market, and the majority of those that are still within the bounds of laboratories. Okay, and then next I will discuss the future of animal biotechnology in the Philippines as far as the DA Livestock Biotechnology is concerned under the Biotech Program Office, and then some key takeaways. Okay, so the world population continues to increase, and feeding the world sustainably remains to be a global challenge. This is the forecast, and it shows that the world population will exceed 10 billion by 2059. While an annual decline in population growth is also presented in the forecast, there is an urgent need to find innovative ways to meet this challenge, taking into consideration preserving the natural ecosystems for future generations. And then I found this very interesting facts about the food, and it shows here that 50% of Earth's habitable land is already used for agriculture, according to FAO. And then the global food system is the single biggest contributor to climate change, responsible for around a third of all greenhouse gas emissions. The agriculture as the primary driver of deforestation, habitat loss, and biodiversity loss, according to IPBES in 2019. And then humanity could require 80% more food by 2100. And then the number of people suffering from hunger and malnutrition has been increasing in step with the global population since 2014. So as you can see, it's a bit alarming, but looking at it on the positive side as a researcher or scientist as well as policymakers, there are available tools and policies that we can use so that we can address this kind of problem. Again, I will discuss some of the current challenges that the Philippine livestock industry is experiencing right now, such as global warming. So we are now on the month of April, and we can really experience the scorching heat. And during the rainy season, we have so many typhoons that we are experiencing during the rainy months. And we also have several diseases such as African swine fever, bird flu, that are really causing tremendous negative effects and losses in our livestock industry, and also the emergence of antimicrobial resistance. So aside from that, we also have some concerns about high cost of farm inputs, some of which are the raw materials for feeds, and also we don't have that much breeding animals that can support us to meet the production that can help sustain or provide the necessary food requirements for the common public. Although we have native animals, but these are much focused on the niche market, so we really need to do something about it. So it's good that we have a tool that we can use in addressing this problem, and one of which is the biotechnology. According to Oxford Dictionary, biotechnology is the manipulation of living organisms or their components to produce useful, usually commercial products. So It is a game changer, and it is an alternative tool that we can use to improve the animal productivity in various ways, such as improving the production of products, promoting growth, and improving the nutrient intake efficiency by increasing the rate of reproduction of domestic animals, also by increasing the quality of animal production, resistance to diseases, and the like. Actually, the animal or livestock biotechnology has been used several years ago, as documented here in Egypt, since they are doing the natural breeding selection. And they are also doing art domestication and the use of traditional animal biotechnology, as you can see here, from broilers, cattle, and also the use of vaccines and artificial insemination. It's only during the the discovery of the genetic code when the modern animal biotechnology has been extensively used. So let me show you here a simple representation about the some of the techniques that we can use using biotechnology. This is a representation from crop biotech. So we have there the GMO on the left, and then the gene editing tools. So when you say GM, it involves the altering of its genetic material by adding, changing, or removing certain DNA sequences that does not occur naturally. As compared to the gene edited, it actually this actually happens in a natural setting, but with this advanced technology such as CRISPR-Cas, talents, and the like, we can pinpoint specific targets that we would like to edit in a faster rate, so that we can get the desired trait that we would like for this certain animal. But of course, it usually pass a rigorous process so that it will be um, um, acceptable to the common public. So these are just some of the applications of the livestock biotechnology techniques, such as it helps in the climate change and disease resilience of or resistant animals. It also helps in increasing the income of livestock food producers, doubling food production to meet the demand and for supply, proper animal management, and it helps in the rapid diagnosis and modern disease surveillance. This is a very good illustration of how the use of new breeding innovation can be used as a driver for change in livestock. So, starting from the cell source, such as the zygote or fibroblast, we can use the gene editing techniques such as the CRISPR-Cas system to knock in or to knock out. And then we do the cell manipulation, such as somatic cell nuclear transfer and the like. And then we do the embryo transfer through different livestock species. And we can do it in several applications, be it in agricultural and biomedical fields. So in the agricultural, we can use it for fiber production, reproduction traits, and milk quality. While for the biomedical area, we can do it in xenotransplantation, animal models, and gene therapy. Okay, so this is also another good illustration of how the history of the development of biotechnology in animals were developed. From the first transgenic pigs or sheep, and then, as you can see here, Dolly the sheep. And we have here the Aqua Advantage salmon, which is already in the market. But of course, this is only made available in certain regions. Also, the Gulf-safe pigs. And it's only when the year 2015 onwards when we started the use of advanced genome editing tools for genomic alterations such as CRISPR-Cas system, zinc finger nuclease talents, and the like. So in doing this gene modern biotech tools, we should consider the application of these tools for different thematic areas in animals such as nutrition, health, reproduction and physiology, breeding and genetics, production management, of course, the environment which we're in, we are concerned about the climate change, food safety and welfare. So in the next slides, I will show you some of the um, gene edited or GM animals on the pipeline that belongs to these different thematic areas. Okay, so the first one is the cattle with slick hair coat to better regulate their internal body temperature with an increased capacity of sweating. So this one helps in the regulation of body temperature. And the other one at the bottom is the color diluted dairy cattle. So the lightening of the color coat can reduce the radiative heat gain from exposure to sunlight. So mind you, these animals are still on the bounds of laboratory experimentation. Ano, they are still in the laboratory setting. So another is the polled cattle from UC Davis. It really helps to reduce the because horns are used to defend against other animals. So if these animals are polled, so it really reduces the damage or injury that other animals can experience. Another is the red Angus. So aside from being a breed of cattle that is good for meat quality, the red Angus is also excellent for milk production and have a strong maternal instinct. So here in the Philippines, the Philippine Carabao Center already adopted the somatic cell nuclear transfer. So we already have several offsprings produced by somatic cell nuclear transfer. Not only water buffaloes, but I think we also have cattle as well. So again, in Europe, we already have this porcine resistant reproductive and respiratory syndrome resistant pigs. They also have the bird flu resistant chicken that contains an extra gene that interrupts the transmission of bird flu. I think these animals are products of the Roslin Institute in Europe. And some of the GM animals. So when we say GM animals, as what I have said earlier, it altered its genetic material by adding, changing, or removing certain DNA sequences in a way that does not occur naturally. So we have the gall-safe pigs. This is in response to those people that are allergic to alpha gal sugars. Rosita Isa from Argentina. So this cattle is born that express milk containing proteins present in human milk but lacking in cow's milk. And then another one is GM cow Daisy. So its milk provides evidence that a genetic technique called RNA interference can work on large animals. So this one, although it's not an animal, a product of Oxitec, they have the genetically modified male mosquitoes that carry a self-limiting gene wherein the offsprings do not reach adulthood, reducing the spread of mosquito-borne diseases. So this is very useful for diseases such as dengue, malaria, Zika, and the like, which is very prevalent in tropical and subtropical countries such as the Philippines. So for the molecular diagnostics, which involves taking DNA or RNA, and then this unique genetic code can be used to analyze the sequences for red flags that can pinpoint the potential emergence of specific disease. So we already have developed several diagnostic tests here in the Philippines. So the Manila Health Tech have developed several kits as shown here, such as the Schistosoma japonicum, Leptospira, and Salmonella LAMP-based test kit. Also, they have the PCR for ASF. And this one in here is the low-cost portable molecular diagnostic platform for the rapid detection of poultry infectious diseases developed by 3 universities in the Philippines, such as the UEP, UP Los Baños, and CABSU. And also, they are already employing CRISPR-Cas system for the detection of COVID-19 and other emerging infectious diseases. So here at the Philippine Carabao Center and the DA Livestock Biotechnology Center, we already developed LAMP-based test kit for caprine arthritis encephalitis virus and LAMP kit for lumpy skin disease. And these are now on the phase 2 for the larger field trial and potential commercialization. So for the vaccine development, so aside from the conventional vaccines such as inactivated vaccines and live attenuated vaccines, there are new technologies that we can use, such as nucleic acid vaccine, subunit vaccine, gene-deleted vaccine, virus-like particle vaccine, and many more. And we can also use the CRISPR-Cas system for the vaccine development, and we have a group from the PGC Agriculture at the UPLB who are on the process of developing this kind of vaccine. For the feed optimization, so biotechnology can also be used for feed improvement, value addition to forage used for as animal feed, production of feed additives, and the manipulation of rumen microbes to improve feed utilization. So we already have several local products here developed by the UPLB Biotech, such as Immunidefense, the PECM that is already on the medium scale production here in Luzon and also in Mindanao. So we can also engage into the genetic engineering of rumen microorganism to improve the animal gut health and performance, and also the use of probiotics and prebiotics, as well as yellow corn for um, feeds, and also as grains for raw materials for feeds for monogastric and ruminants. For food safety, we also have products again from the UPLB Biotech. We have the PCR for the bacterial pathogens in food, water, and animal feeds. DIPS for detection of salmonella in select food matrices, and also the KeySense for the detection of E. coli, Salmonella, enterica in food, water, and animal feeds. So the GalSafe Pigs I already mentioned a while ago. For the precision fermentation, so this is another interesting topic that we can also dive in. So in other countries, they already have the animal-free milk and cheese produced through precision fermentation. So they are using microbes such as yeast and fungi that can produce animal proteins or fat with the same taste, texture, and nutrition as compared with the animal source. So they have the insulin and also the chymosin that are used for precision fermentation and also for cheese and milk production, respectively. And for the xenotransplantation, which played a crucial role in advancing the xenotransplantation by addressing the challenges associated with immune rejection and disease transmission. So as you can see, the organs that are grown in animal models, such as pigs, can also be used for humans, such as the heart and also kidneys. As you can see here in the picture from, I think this one is from the US. So what is the future of animal biotechnology in the Philippines? So our group at the Philippine Carabao Center as well as the DA Livestock Biotechnology Center reviewed those Philippine commodity industry roadmaps for poultry, livestock, and corn. And we identified those challenges as and grouped it according to um, livestock commodities. For the poultry, still the problem is the high cost of feeds and input supplies, disease outbreaks such as AI, and challenges in farm waste management. For the swine, uh, still the ASF is still a problem, and then cost of feeds, and then poor waste management. For the small and large ruminants, we need to have a breeding program as well as insufficient supply of high quality meat and milk and limited access to veterinary services and artificial insemination, high production cost, and high import dependency due to low milk production. And we also included several livestock commodities, such as horses. Bees are included in the livestock and also corn. So we need to address the problems on climate vulnerabilities, high dependency on imported fertilizers, and pest and disease management system. So for the breeding strategies, these are the areas that we can do aside from the conventional genetic improvement. So we can use the advanced biotechnology tools for the genetic engineering to improve disease resistance and egg production efficiency, disease resistance such as the PRRS resistant pigs, and hopefully we can also have the ASF resistant pigs in the future. Marker assisted selection and the use of assisted reproductive technologies, and also the use of sex semen technology, which the DA Philippine Carabao Center is now embarking. So hopefully this year we can use this technology. And yeah, genetic engineering for other livestock commodities under the breeding strategies. For the disease management, so we can delve into modern disease platforms, disease diagnostic platforms, and probiotics, the use of RT-PCR and CRISPR-based diagnostics. So I would like to inform everyone that soon we will have a BSL-3 laboratory at the Center for Transboundary Animal Diseases. So this is additional facility that we can use for the disease management um, of livestock concern. So for the pigs, we have the biosensors and machine learning and molecular-based diagnostic platforms, therapeutics and vaccines for small ruminants. So we can also use the sterile insect technique, since some of the diseases in small and large ruminants are carried by vectors such as tabanus or horseflies, mosquitoes, etc. And the use of biopesticides for microbial-based pest control solutions. And then for the feed development, so we can use precision fermentation as what I have discussed earlier, enzyme technology and genetic modification, microbial feed additives and probiotics, nutrigenomics, and the use of biofertilizers for yellow corn and other forage. Since we have problem on the sufficiency of forage for large and small ruminants. So we at the DA Livestock Biotechnology Center have been reaching out to different stakeholders, be it SUCs, other government institutions, and other public and private stakeholders that we can partner in promoting biotechnology solutions to uh, immediate concerns in the livestock industry. So we have these roles and functions of the center. So we do technology development and innovation, are for the biotechnology capacity building service, partnerships and fund generation, and technology commercialization and management. So far, these are just some of the activities and milestones that the DA Livestock Biotechnology Center has been achieved. And of course, with your help and participation, we can do more in the coming years. So for the technology development, we develop this kind of technologies, and then intellectual property generation, and we are open for research mentorships, be it undergraduate, MS students, PhD, and also we are looking for um, we can partner with balik scientists or those prolific scientists that is focusing on livestock researches. So these are just some of the pictures that we have. And we have some facilities here that we can use, such as the genetic analyzer facility and other equipment. So for the trainings, we have the Regional Livestock Biotechnology Symposium. So this year, we are planning to go to Visayas and look for partners um, that we can collaborate on research. And then we also do International Livestock Biotechnology Symposium, usually in partnership with ISA. Proposal writing workshop, and then hands-on training on molecular biology and biotechnology. So we are partnering with DA bureaus and attached agencies in terms of biotechnology 101. And also, we also partner with several SUCs and also consultancy and mentorship. So these are just some of the pictures. The first regional livestock biotechnology symposium was held last year at the San Jose, Batangas. Okay. So these are also some of the partners that we have, local and international, research supported, not only local but also international funding. Yeah. I will not mention it one by one. Okay, so these are just some of the pictures that we have. Of course, we are very thankful for the support of DA Biotech Program Office, and also our mentor, Dr. Claro Mingala, who is now at the National Livestock Program, and also our dedicated SUCs. And soon we can partner more local researchers and also international partners. So for the technology commercialization and management, so we are collaborating with different research institutions. Okay, and then IEC materials, and we support events that are helping in promoting the biotechnology. Yan. Okay, so some of the key takeaways, indeed we have exciting opportunities at our hand that we can use modern biotechnology in addressing the pressing problems of livestock industry in the Philippines. But of course, we cannot do it alone. we need multiple stakeholders that are working together to make this um, initiative happen. And of course, there should be efficient policies in place. And of course, we also need to have a adequate and sufficient funding for biotech research and innovation. Of course, we also need to strengthen education and public awareness so that um, the co- um, the public will be properly informed about our uh, the activities that we are doing, and hopefully it would spur interest for our young generations to join the workforce in promoting modern biotechnology. So I think that would be all, and you can contact us in here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marvin, for giving us an overview of the application of biotechnology in animals. Everyone, you may send your questions through the Zoom Q&A function, and we'll answer them later during the Q&A session. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Marvin, for the comprehensive presentation. Everyone, let us give him a virtual round of applause. Moving on to our next speaker, we have Dr. Claro N. Mingala, Program Director at the Department of Agriculture National Livestock Program. Dr. Mingala is a highly accomplished scientist and leader in veterinary medicine with expertise spanning molecular immunology, diagnostics, and food safety. He holds a Doctor of Veterinary Science and Medicine and a Master of Veterinary Studies from Central Luzon State University. He completed his PhD in veterinary science at the Hokkaido University in Japan, complemented by postdoctoral research at Cornell University in New York. His research focuses on addressing critical issues such as antimicrobial resistance in food products, improving livestock health through biotechnology, and developing advanced diagnostic tools for animal diseases. Dr. Mingala has published extensively with over 127 scientific papers. He has received numerous prestigious awards, including the 2022 Outstanding Professional of the Year Award in Veterinary Medicine by the Professional Regulation Commission. Beyond his research, he serves as a scientist at the Philippine Carabao Center, a technical advisor for livestock at the Department of Agriculture, a member of the Professional Regulatory Board of Veterinary Medicine, and now a program director of the DA National Livestock Program. His leadership extends to various professional organizations where he held key positions and mentored numerous students. Dr. Mingala's contributions have significantly advanced the fields of veterinary science and food safety in the Philippines. To discuss the regulatory landscape of animal biotechnology in the Philippines, please welcome Dr. Claro N. Mingala.
Thank you very much, Ms. Janine. Right. The title of my presentation is In the Pipeline, Status of Policy Initiatives on Genetically Modified and Gene-Edited Animals. As you have noticed, the first presentation by Dr. Villanueva covers everything probably about the research area. But now I will be discussing about the policy initiatives or the guidelines that the government will be taking into so that we can effectively regulate all the products that the biotechnology application applies to the animal or livestock industry. Yes. Okay, so as I mentioned, this particular policy guidelines will be used to regulate the products of animal biotechnology. And probably some of us would take regulatory processes as a hindrance with regards to the application or use of GM products or even gene-edited products for the purpose of enhancing our production in the livestock industry. So there's a lot of years we have taken into account to develop or draft a particular policy, especially in GM animal policy. I think it's around almost 8 years already. And since 2017, a team led by Dr. Halos and now the Assistant Secretary Paz Benavides and myself studies about GM animals and new breeding techniques across countries so that we can have a basis on how we will develop our very own regulatory policy in the Philippines. And in 2019, it was endorsed by the National Committee on Biosafety of the Philippines. The study that we did, we actually compiled all the necessary information about the GM animals or the genetically modified animals and livestock. Okay, so in 2020, an interagency technical working group was created for the formulation of the GM animal policy. This interagency technical working group is actually composed of different departments of the government, led of course by the Department of Agriculture, and then the Department of Health, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and the ILG is included. And then this particular interagency technical working group was the one who facilitated the crafting of the draft guidelines. So in the 2023, public consultations was conducted so that the particular guidelines will be subjected to scrutinies by the public. If there will be some questions about the guidelines, as well as the insights or inputs coming from the different sectors of the society. And then the implementation of ARTA Memorandum Circular number 2022-06, which requires the conduct of the regulatory impact assessment for new policy proposal. Actually, before there is no such RIA in any regulatory process yet. But when the RIA or the regulatory impact assessment was conceived, these particular regulatory guidelines made for the GM animals was the first guidelines that was subjected to this particular RIA. Somehow it is advantageous so that we can see the real impact, no, of this particular regulatory policy with the sectors. But on the negative side, it put the guidelines, the drafted guidelines, into another layer. That's why somehow it lengthens, no, the process for the evaluation and assessment of this particular guidelines. And now, just last year in 2024, completion of preliminary impact assessment in compliance with ARTA Memorandum Circular number 2022-06 was performed. But of course, another layer, public consultation, will be conducted again in compliance to the order of the Anti-Red Tape Act of law, which is the one that issued the memorandum circular. So the guidelines that I am mentioning is proposed by the DOST, DA, DANR, DOH, and the ILG. This is the Joint Department Circular on GM animals and animal products. Various seminars and workshops, or even international invitations. During those activities, I already presented these particular guidelines and shared to them how the Philippines is moving through the development of our very own guidelines. And the subject of this is the rules and regulations or the research and development, handling and use transboundary movement, listen to the environment, and management of genetically modified animals and animal products derived from the use of modern biotechnology. So the applicability of this particular guideline is actually for genetically modified fish and aquatic resources. It also includes the genetically modified domesticated animals, particularly livestock for food. And then we have the biological agents for agriculture and fisheries used for biocontrol derived from the use of modern biotechnology. There are somehow issues and concerns raised during the drafting of these particular guidelines. When we encountered the GM mosquito, it's actually mentioned by Dr. Villanueva earlier about the GM mosquito because it's entirely not entirely related, but somehow it's indirectly related to agriculture. And because this particular guidelines was conceived, led by the Department of Agriculture, GM mosquito somehow differed or removed from the guidelines because it's more onto the public health concerns because GM mosquito would be the vector of several human diseases like Zika, dengue, or even yellow fever viruses. But anyhow, probably in the future, we can include other genetically modified mosquitoes that concern with regards to the diseases in livestock. So, of course, history is those issues that is applicable under the guidelines. But of course, the gene editing are not covered under this particular memorandum circular because it doesn't contain any foreign gene. So in the guidelines, it's making biosafety decision. We have the risk assessment, which is the systematic process of identifying potential hazard and evaluating the risk they pose, allowing for the implementation of measures to mitigate or eliminate this risk. And we have the standard precautionary measures, which is the minimum prevention practices we should have, regardless of suspected or confirmed findings. Also, a very important point is the environmental and the health risk assessment. This would give us some idea whether a particular product, especially in livestock, would invade the ecosystem or could cause biodiversity changes or challenges. And then we have the social, economic, ethical, and cultural considerations. This particular point is very essential and very somehow complicated as well because it contains the public perception and acceptance, access and equity, and social justice. That is under social. But in economics, there will be also considerations on market dynamics, cost and benefits, as well as trade and competition. For ethics, we have the animal welfare, and somehow there's also misconception about playing cards when we develop genetically modified animals. People has a misconception of those scientists playing cards. And of course, the effect on religious and cultural beliefs. This also encompass traditional knowledge and practices, cultural values, and the like. So there's a lot of really consideration in drafting the guidelines. It's just not easy. We also have the access for information, the transparency and public participation, and of course, prompt and efficient action, especially if people there's a lot of misconceptions about the gene-modified livestock or animals. And of course, it's also very important that the advocacy and information campaign goes along with this, because despite of the efforts that our scientists and researchers is putting into developing an alternative products made from genetic modifications or gene editing, there's a lot of challenges still ahead, especially to the layman that doesn't really understand the technology. So the role of the national government agencies, as I mentioned earlier, the Department of Agriculture lead in addressing biosafety issues related to the country's agricultural productivity and food security, and also lead in the evaluation and monitoring of regulated articles. Along with that is the DOST that will lead in ensuring that the best science is utilized and applied in adapting biosafety, of course, including policies and in making biosafety decisions. Then we have the lead in evaluating and monitoring contained use of regulated articles. For the DANR, they will ensure that the applicable environmental assessments are undertaken and potential impacts identified, including evaluation and monitoring, bioremediation, improvement of genetic resources, and wildlife genetic resources. Of course, the DOH, as we know, they will formulate the guidelines and review results of assessing the health impacts posed by modern biotechnology, because we are very, very concerned on the effect of the genetically modified livestock, especially for food use. And also they will lead for the evaluation and monitoring the GM animals, food-derived products that containing GMOs. The DILG, on the other hand, will formulate guidelines and review results of assessing the health impacts posed by the modern biotechnology and lead in evaluating and monitoring processed food derived from and containing GMOs. So the policy guideline is like this particular figure. No, we have the contained. It will be under the DOST. It is still on the R&D phase, as I mentioned earlier. For the limited release, it will be handled by the Bureau of Animal Industry and BFAR. Of course, because BAI will handle the livestock or terrestrial animals, and the BFAR will handle the marine or aquatic resources. And then for the commercialization, both bureaus under the DA will also handle the contained use. And then for the general release, both of them will also handle that, especially when it's already on the commercial use. So the current status, ongoing conduct of full regulatory impact assessment, as I mentioned earlier, the preliminary phase is already done on the proposed regulations, providing relevant quantitative and qualitative data on its impact. We are hoping that this will be completed on the second quarter of 2025. Yes, we are already starting the second quarter. So we are hoping and praying that this will be passed soon and signed by our secretaries across the 5 departments that I have just mentioned. Then after that, of course, the RIA, after that, I already mentioned, there will be another public consultation that will be conducted. So policy on the new breeding techniques, the National Committee on Biosafety of the Philippines, Resolution number 10/2020, states that products of plant breeding innovation, also generally referred to as new breeding techniques, may be a GMO if they contain a novel combination of genetic materials obtained using modern biotechnology. Non-GMO or conventional product if they do not contain a novel combination of genetic material. This just emphasizes that this particular principle will also use for the GM animals. I also mentioned earlier that although during the process of developing the particular product would engage a foreign gene for especially when we use plasmids, but the product should not contain any other foreign genes anymore. So especially when we use the gene editing technology. So now the current status, a benchmarking study to look into the various aspects in the adoption and use of NDTs in livestock and fisheries is set to be conducted in support of policy development, expected to be completed by the third quarter of the year. So we have the inquiry from the developers for the PRRS resistant pigs. It's a gene edited. So resistance was achieved by deleting the CD163 gene, which served as a virus binding site, considered conventional in Brazil and Colombia, because it doesn't contain any foreign genes anymore. And then we also have the gene-edited Maday red sea bream. It's a fish achieved through knockout of myostatin. We suppress muscle growth, increasing the edible part 1.2 to 1.6 times than the conventional fish, with an improved feed utilization efficiency by about 14%, approved by and commercialized by Japan. I think that's it. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Karen Penaso of the Bureau of Animal Industry, who made this presentation for me. Because the Bureau of Animal Industry is actually the secretariat for the GM animals, and they are the one pushing this particular effort of the Department of Agriculture. Thank you very much and good day to everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mingala, for that presentation. Definitely, the presentation of our speakers has given us more knowledge about animal biotech regulations. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Mingala. Let us give him a virtual round of applause. So that concludes our presentations for today. We encourage everyone to post your questions through the Zoom Q&A function. For our Q&A session, we have Senior Associate Scientist of ISA, Mr. Panfilo de Guzman, to moderate the discussion. To our speakers, Dr. Villanueva and Dr. Mingala, please turn on your cameras for the Q&A session. Sir Popin, the floor is now yours.
Okay, thank you, Janine. We have another panelist, Dr. Abraham Manalo. Dr. Manalo is an assistant professor of the University of the Philippines, National College of Public Administration and Governance, and he is also the executive secretary of the Biotechnology Coalition of the Philippines. He was a former and the founding chair of the Department of Public Administration at the New Era University. He obtained his doctorate and master's degree in public administration from UP Diliman, where he also took his master's of statistics. Dr. Manalo is a policy specialist with work on biotechnology and biosafety regulation, and I think he worked closely with the DABPI in crafting the animal biotechnology policy or framework. Now we will proceed with the Q&A. We have one question coming from Dr. Gabriel Romero. Dr. Villanueva already answered this, but for the benefit of our other participants, I will ask the question again, and for Dr. Villanueva to give his answer again. So the question is, are there gene editing projects being pursued in the Philippines for livestock improvement? Dr. Romero, Dr. Villanueva, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Popin. Yes, we are working with several partners, SUCs, other government agencies, and even private stakeholders to work on several gene editing projects. So one of which is the vaccine development, since we really have some problems on diseases in livestock such as ASF, bird flu, and the like. And I'm happy that we were able to tap several experts such as the PGC Agriculture. They are doing great in their respective works. So I hope we can find more partners even sa local setting, because aside from local researchers, we also tap international experts. Yeah, of course together with Dr. Mingala in working with several projects that concerns gene biotechnology projects. So aside from animal health, we also have a ongoing project on climate smart animal project, wherein our colleague here from Philippine Carabao Center is doing. She's Dr. Excel Rio Mailen, and she's checking several heat shock proteins that can be used for selecting those animals that are more resistant to adverse climate problems. So we are still looking for several partners, not only in animal health, in repro. I hope we can have partners with regards to nutrition, product development, climate change, and others in breeding, so that we can have a more holistic approach in doing this kind of research. Actually, Dr. Romero is asking um, if we do on genetically modified or gene edited. So I think you may see that in the presentation of Dr. Mingala, that gene edited animals are not covered in the policy. So we are focusing more on gene edited, hopefully, so that it will not that be a problem in the future. Yun po. Thank you very much, Sir Popin. Sir, naka-mute po kayo.
Dr. Mingala, you mentioned about the conduct of RIA, regulatory impact assessment. I'm wondering what particular parameters are being measured in that RIA.
Actually, the risk impact assessment was actually pushed by the ARTA, and I can ask Dr. Manalo to enlighten us in this particular portion, because there is already risk assessment made by the group, the TWG before.
So
But
you
this
mean we are
particular-
using a different model, not
I
from
think
ours.
they
Okay.
are using a different model, and I have no particular idea yet how this is made, because I don't know if this will be just a duplication or
Okay, yeah.
or what. No, I don't know if we can ask Dr.
Yeah, maybe we can ask
Manalo.
Dr. Abe. Doc Abe, please, if you can.
Salamat. Salamat, Doc Bong, and Sir Popen. Salamat to. Magkaiba po yung framework ng yung regular nating risk assessment para malaman kung ito ay ligtas o hindi ligtas, tulad ng discuss ni Doc Bong. So yun po yung GM Animal Risk Assessment to determine if the product is safe or not safe, or how it will be regulated. Yung sa RIA ho ng ARTA, ang kanilang framework ay kailangan ba itong mga regulasyon na ito? So, ganun ho sila nanggagaling. Yung mga bagong regulasyon na gustong ipatupad ng iba't ibang ahensya ng pamahalaan, dapat sila mismo i-assess kung in the first place kailangan ba sila. So, ganun ho yun. Hindi na tinitingnan kung ligtas o hindi ligtas yung mga produkto, baliktad. Sila naman tinitingnan kung may pangangailangan ba itong mga regulasyon na ito. Kasi ayaw nga nila ng red tape, ayaw nga nila ng masyadong bureaucracia. So dapat anumang bagong regulasyon na ipapatupad sa Pilipinas ay dumaan sa regulatory impact assessment.
Nakamute po kayo.
Dr. Mingala, na-mention niyo po kanina, based on your presentation, parang hindi covered ang gene editing. And I would also assume that the using of gene drives is not also covered ng policy framework. Because kasi gene drives is being used sa mosquitoes actually to suppress the population that can cause malaria, for instance. So under this animal regulatory framework, are those two not covered? When you you mentioned about gene editing, and then I would like to know if the use of gene drives is also not covered under this regulation.
Let me clarify the question. I'll give you example for the gene edited animals, like for example the hornless cattle of University of California, Davis.
Okay.
When they developing the animal, they use plasmids, no? So that it would edit the gene of the animal, and then they will try to knock out the gene that would produce the horn. So it's in technically it's a gene edited technology, but when they check that, the US FDA found out that the certain part of the plasmid was left, no, doon sa in the gene.
Mhm.
So then technically it's a genetically modified. That's why it was not able to pass the process. It's a gene edited technology, but unfortunately the part of the gene was still there, plasmid, which is a foreign gene. So the product now, or the hornless cattle now, wasn't able to pass the regulations. Go to the gene drive. In my understanding, gene drive is it's like a uncontrolled proliferation of the for example, mosquito in the environment. So it could cause what you call this? It could cause uncontrolled release.
Mhm.
So it's entirely different. That's my understanding. So if a particular animal or insect that is developed under gene edited and pass through and pass the regulatory process, I don't think there will be a gene drive issue anymore. But if a particular product or insect or even livestock is genetically modified with a foreign gene, that's why there's a portion there that it should be race contained.
Yeah. Mhm.
It should not be released in the environment. So those are particular concerns that the developer should consider. Otherwise, it would not pass the regulation or regulatory process.
Okay. Dr. Abby, do you have anything to add to that? Particularly ang gene editing. I think here in the Philippines, we are not yet using the gene drive technology. But when it comes to gene editing, we are actually using it now. So I think the general rule is unless there is a foreign object present in the product, it will not be subjected to any regulatory and will not be considered as a GMO. Is that right?
Tama, Sir Popen. At
Okay po.
pinaliwanag nga po kanina sa presentation ni Doc Bong na meron ng resolution ang NCBP, National Committee on Biosafety of the Philippines, for gene-edited plants and plant products. So ngayon, ang binubuo ngayon ay sana maglabas din ang ang NCBP ng same resolution for gene-edited animals.
Okay, so there's one question here. Should a regulatory framework that assesses the safety of GM animals for food use be equally applicable to each secondary product? That means if you have a genetically or gene-edited animal that produces milk, the secondary product can be a cheese. Should also this be subjected to a safety assessment?
Well, when we do the safety assessment, we always consider, I think, 2 or 3 concerns. No, first is the allergenicity of the product, toxicity of the product, and for the environment, it should be the invasiveness of the product, similar to the crops or even for the animals. But if those 3 concerns or issues is addressed, I think it's not it should not be it's just already safe, no, to be consumed. The question is for the secondary product, the cheese, unless otherwise the what you call this, the
Process?
bacteria that you use, the bacteria that you use to make it as cheese, or the other what you call this, bioreactors, enzymes. That's the one that you need to also consider in the food safety. But if you will be using the same similar enzymes, the conventional enzymes that are used for cheese making, I think there's no need to undergo the same process of food safety evaluation anymore. I hope I answered the question correctly. It's actually very tricky, you know, because for example, the production of milk, it doesn't, if the animal that produce the milk has no foreign gene, why do you need to test the milk? It's still the same. So that's the process.
Okay, thank you very much. You have additional ano po, Doc Abby, to that?
So tama po si Doc Bong. Sa katunayan, ang FDA, dati siyang BIFAD pa noon, ay naglabas na ng statement na kung ang ingredients ay approved and determined as safe ng ang pinag-uusapan natin nung nakaraan ay GM plants. Pag ang ingredients ay approved na as safe at dumaan sa biosafety process ng Bureau of Plant Industry, ang pagtanggap dito ng BIFAD na ngayon ay FDA ay ligtas na rin ito para sa tao, sa hayop at kapaligiran kung walang mababago sa kanilang traditional processing. So tama ho yung sinabi ni Doc Bong.
Okay, thank you. There's another question here from Dr. Gabby Romero. Is it possible to complete the benchmarking study within the second quarter of this year? Doc Clara, please.
Actually, the strategy that we are now undertaken is to ask the developer to provide all the information that we need. Because if we will be having a independent review, that would take time. And we are assuming, and we are very much, you call this, we are asking or letting our counterpart developer to provide the needed information. Of course, it should not be like kind of conflict of interest or something like that. But we hope they could provide the information that we need without bias, without any bias, so that we can fast track all the process.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here from Dr. P. Destambalo. from UPLB. GM plants encountered legal issues in the country. Do you do you not expect the same from GM animals? That's a very
We are expecting because it's the same process. But legal issues sometimes originates from what you call this lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge. That's why we are encouraging our scientists, our our researchers, our partners to do advocacy, promotion, of course, science communication. Otherwise, there's a lot of people who doesn't know really the science behind of these particular products, and they will pose issues and concerns until they will reach the point that our courts would would impose or would give orders against this product. But if we can give them the knowledge based on science, probably it would not pose any legal issues anymore. So, in a sense, we need to orient our judiciary or even our legislators so that they will understand the real science behind this product. This is not the solution alone for our food security. No, this is just an alternative, but this is a very a very good alternative so that we can increase the yield or protect the livestock or even the crops against pests and diseases, and increase the yield, of course, of our agricultural products as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess you might be asking around. So, what do you think is the percentage of acceptability among different stakeholders here in the country? Maybe you can also add to that, Dr. Villanueva and Doc Abe. Or you first, Dr. Pingala?
I think my answer to this is similar to the previous question. Acceptability is also would entail knowledge from the consumers, because unless they will know, they will understand, and the product undergoes the safety assessment, I think we can get a higher acceptability percentage. But if not, they will just rely to the things that they watch in the TV, that if you eat this particular food, you will become a mutant or a monster. It really affects the acceptability of the products made from biotechnology. Thank you.
Dr. Villanueva, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. Thank you very
Being on the
much.
research side.
Thank you very much for that very difficult question. Yeah, I think I will also go with Dr. Mingala's answer. From the technical side, as a researcher, we just need to be very transparent that all of the activities or research activities that we've done, we make sure that this is made public, and we will not hide anything, because Filipino researchers are indeed very good, and I really admire those Filipino scientists who go home and help the Philippine industry. And I think through strategic communications on the proper information dissemination that we can give to our consumers, I think little by little, it will gain acceptance on the consumption of biotechnology products. Thank you.
You have anything to add, Doc Abe?
Ah, tama ho yung tama ho yung sinabi ni Doc Bong tsaka ni Doc Marvin. Marami ng pag-aaral na lumabas upang tukuyin kung gaano ang pagtanggap ng mga tao sa mga produktong ito. At pare-pareho ang kanilang naging resulta. Ang pagtanggap ay may kinalaman sa kaalaman. Taasan mo yung kaalaman tungkol sa GM, mas tataas ang pagtanggap ng taong bayan tsaka ng mga policy makers. So that is a result that has been replicated in many studies. As you increase understanding, so much so the acceptance would follow, not only among the consumers, even among the regulators. That is why uh, f- as we speak, now even the European Union that we know are the least accepting of these products. Now they are changing their regulations for gene-edited products in such a way that these are now more accepting to them, because
Mhm.
for the past several years they have discovered uh, they have discovered what is the reason for the acceptance in other countries. So their policymakers also decided to widen their understanding of these products.
Okay, thank you very much. I think there is a follow-up question about the RIA. This is from Merly Palakpak. So what is the composition of the members who will conduct the RIA? Dr. Mingala?
Thank you, Ma'am Merly. Actually, I don't have any idea about the RIA. That's why I asked Dr. Manalo
Mhm.
to pitch in no doon with regards to the first question on RIA. I do not have any idea actually. Although under the Department of Agriculture, it is headed by, of course, the Undersecretary for Policy, but the main focal is Assistant Secretary Patrick Benavides, which is also a member of the technical working group before. Other than that, I don't know how they hide. I don't have any idea how they will do the regulatory impact assessment. Probably Dr. Abe could
Sige,
give
Doc.
more information.
Sige po. So ang sistema ho sa RIA ay kung may bagong regulasyon ng isang ahensya, isang departamento, tulad nitong bagong regulasyon for GM animals. Tama si Doc Bong na mismo ang departamento sila ang pag-aaralan muna nila bago nila isubmit yung bagong regulasyon sa ARTA. So nangyari ho yan. Tiningnan ng Department of Agriculture kung itong bagong regulasyon ay kailangan isubmit sa ARTA sapagkat kakaiba ito ay bago. At meron ng standard ng ARTA para malaman kung ito ba'y kakaiba, bago, very substantive na kailangan dumaan sa ARTA. So tinignan ito ng grupo ng clearinghouse ng Department of Agriculture at nakita nila na may substantive tong regulasyon nito. So pinasa nila sa ARTA. At pagpasa sa ARTA, titingnan naman ho ng ARTA. Una muna, kung ito ay kailangan lang dumaan ng preliminary impact statement para bang expedited. Kaya lang nung dumaan sa ARTA, nakita nila na this is a substantive regulation. So, sabi nila hindi lang dapat preliminary impact statement, kundi full RIA. That is the reason ngayon na magfu-full RIA. So wala hong once na once once na nagawa yung RIA, so gagawin ho ngayon yan ng Department of Agriculture para ipakita na kailangan na itong regulasyon na to, ay mahalaga kahit na you're adding a layer, mahalaga ito para sa kabutihan ng bayan. Ipapasa ho nila, may template, may report, standard report, ipapasa nila sa ARTA at yung ARTA ang titingin kung natugunan nga ba yung pangangailangan ng isang bagong regulasyon at hindi lamang isang bagong red tape.
Okay, thank you. Many are arguing that biosafety decisions should be science-based and socioeconomic consideration should not be part of the safety assessment. So what can you say could be the role of the socioeconomic considerations in making the final decision about GMOs and gene edited products? Doc Mingala, and then we can also ask Doc Abe.
Okay. It's actually very complicated question because we are talking about economics. Of course, when we develop modified gene modification or gene editing, there is a purpose why we are doing that. Not because we just want to do that. The first purpose is to increase the yield. So they increase the yield, especially if we are talking about livestock for food. You want to make it more bigger or more flesh. We can harvest more flesh or meat, and then we can also increase the yield of milk, the volume of milk. So there is already economics. There will be a high productivity. There will be high productivity compared to the conventional. So there will be some kind of market dynamics. But of course, there will be always an issue with regards to the safety. That's why we have the regulatory process. I think that's why we cannot just ignore the economic part, because it would really whether it's indirectly connected to the genetically modified animals or gene editing, somehow it will complement later on. The cost and benefit issues or concern. For example, would the development of genetically modified livestock cheaper in the future, or now it would be expensive? So it's also economics. And then of course the trade and competition. For example, there is an economic issues when the EU decided to ban all genetically modified products. So there is trade limitations already with regards to international trade. So whether we see it doesn't affect directly the economy, there will always be indirectly issues and concerns with regards to that. So we cannot just ignore that.
Okay. Doc Abe, what is your take on that one?
So tama ho, mahalaga ang socio-economic. Walang question. Mahalaga ang socio-economic considerations. Ulitin ko, walang question. Ang tanong ay, ano ang kinalaman ng socio-economic
I
considerations?
think the question is about, should it be part of the biosafety or the safety assessment?
So naano ho ito, ang tugon dito ng regulatory system natin sa Pilipinas ay oo, mahalaga ang socio-economic considerations, pero ito ay hiwalay sa biosafety decision making.
Yeah.
So sa biosafety, tinitingnan ko ito ay ligtas sa tao, sa hayop at kapaligiran. Sa socio-economic considerations, tinitingnan labas ko ito ay ligtas kasi itong pagtingin ko ito ay ligtas, scientifically determined ho ito. May safety determination. Pero sabi nga natin, mahalagang socio-economic. So, kung nakita na ito ay ligtas sa tao, sa hayop kapaligiran, kasama ngayon sa decision making ng head ng regulations, ng regulatory unit. For example, BPI, BAI, or BIFAR. Titingnan ngayon nila yung socio-economic considerations kasama ng biosafety determination.
Okay, thank you very much. There's one question here from our anonymous attendee. What safety tests prior to release or consumption are required of GM animals? Is Philippines doing the safety test or capable of doing those tests? Dr. Marvin, being on the technical side, can you please answer that one? And maybe we can also ask Dr. Mingala. So what are the safety tests prior to the release of or consumption required for GM animals, and is the Philippines capable of doing those safety tests?
So right now, with regards to animal side, we are not still doing this one as compared to GM crops, because GM crops, for GM crops, the BPI is the one who is doing that. But right now, we are doing several capacity building activities to capacitate our regulatory agencies such as the Bureau of Animal Industry, NMIS, NDA, so that I think since they are the ones who will be doing this kind of task once the GM animals will be introduced here in the Philippines. Maybe Dr. Mingala can add more on this question. Thank you.
Okay, I already mentioned during my presentation about the safety issues. Question is about safety issues. For the health, of course, we have the toxicity and allergenicity. That's the only two, I think, major concern. Because if there will be, like, for example, for genetically modified, if there is a foreign gene, would it cost to have, would there be a new protein that will be generated that can cause toxicity or allergenicity? So at the very beginning, during the research stage, they are already assessing that, evaluating that. If there is, they will not proceed anymore. So that's the level of screening. And then for the invasiveness as well, whether it's a crop or animals, environmental effect will also be assessed. So, for example, if the GM salmon, the genetically modified salmon, although the gene that was inserted to the salmon is also came from an edible fish, nonetheless, it's still a GM salmon. It's already commercialized, but they decided not to release that to the environment because it's probably they are thinking that this is a new species because there is a foreign gene. So they producing that under confinement. So if there is a possibility of possible invasiveness, and it could also contribute for food security or source of food, they will be raising that in confinement. So there's a lot of screening. So if biosafety wise or safety wise, food safety issue wise, we have a lot of tests that we are doing. I'm answering this question in my capacity as a researcher, not the capacity as a regulator. But of course, in my capacity as a regulator, we will see to it that all those screening levels, a lot of levels of ensuring safety are in place. Otherwise, a particular product would not pass the regulatory process. We are assuring the consumers that we are evaluating and monitoring those regulatory process.
Okay, thank you. There's one question here from Dr. Romero. Is it possible to issue gene-edited animal guideline ahead of the GM animal guidelines? Dr. Mingala.
So sorry, come again.
Is it possible to issue a gene-edited animal guideline ahead of the GM animal? So there are two guidelines, separate guidelines for a gene-edited and one for GM animal guideline. Is it possible to issue the gene-edited first?
Good question. It's really very possible because it's now that we know that a gene-edited animal would give a equally or similar to the conventional.
Yeah.
It is much more very easy to give a guideline other than the gene modified animal. So that is actually how we look at it for now. Because there will be a new TWG to do that, and probably they will produce or the guideline ahead of the genetically modified animals.
Okay, thank you. This is just a comment from Dr. Villegas about socioeconomic considerations, and she said that SEC is not part of biosafety assessment, but can be considered in making decision. And I think this has been expounded by you and Dr. Abe. So we have one last question here from Dr. Jane Reyes. Are we using synthetic biology on animal research, on research for livestock and aquatic animals? I think gene editing is also considered as a synthetic biology, and also as the gene drive is also considered under a synthetic biology. Although there is no, I think there is no yet agreed definition of what a synthetic biology is. So do you have any thoughts on that, Dr. Mingala and maybe Dr. Villanueva?
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Villanueva.
Yeah, actually, I agree with Sir Popin. Because I check, I checked the it's not that common for me to encounter the synthetic biology, but yeah, I think I've encountered several ongoing researches that are already doing the synthetic biology, like tweaking some usual methodology to go into that desired product. I think it is already present, or somebody is already doing here in the Philippines.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I have exhausted all the questions. Can we give a round of applause to our panelists? And I will give back the microphone, the virtual microphone, to Janine. Please, Janine. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Great answers to all the questions. Janine, I give you back the virtual microphone.
Thank you very much, Sir Poppen, for moderating the Q&A session. So as we move forward, we encourage everyone to please complete the evaluation form to receive your certificate of participation. Scan the QR code flashed on your screens or go to the link to access the evaluation form. This post-webinar survey will help us improve our future events and webinars. Before we wrap up our today's webinar, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude and appreciation to our speakers who shared their expertise on animal biotech regulations. We are truly honored to have you as our speakers, and we look forward to future opportunities to collaborate. To formally close our webinar, let us welcome the Director of DA Biotech Program Office, Dr. Paul Limson. Dr. Limson obtained his Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, specializing in large ruminant and lovebird practice. With a career spanning several decades, Dr. Limson has held key positions in various government offices, including his previous position as the Director of Bureau of Animal Industry, where he co-led and introduced policy reforms for the development of beef cattle roadmap. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Paul C. Limson.
Congratulations to everyone who participated in today's webinar. As we conclude today's enlightening session, I commend ISA for orchestrating this essential platform for knowledge sharing. It is through platforms like these that we can exchange ideas and advance the biotech industry. Today, as we face formidable challenges in the agriculture sector, rising disease posing significant threats and a pressing need for sustainable food solutions. These challenges impact our food security, economic resilience, as well as and the well-being of countless farmers and stakeholders. Yet, as we explore, the horizon is with the promise of biotechnology or genetic engineering and distance to improvements in animal nutrition and productivity. Our research community has made impressive strides. Presentations by Dr. Marvin Villanueva and Dr. Claro Mingala, as well as the insights from Dr. Abraham Manalo, underscored the critical importance of collaboration among researchers, regulatory bodies, industry partners, and policymakers. These partnerships are vital for tackling challenges and the safe implementation of biotech innovations. As we move forward, our focus is frameworks that are both progressive and beneficial to humanity. With this in mind, let us continue to harness biotechnology to not only enhance the agriculture sector, but also to address national goals. Thank you once again for your active participation and contributions, and mabayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Limson. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you all learned a lot from a presentation of our speakers. Thank you, everyone.